Story number 1. I guess to tell this story properly, I need to give you a little background. Currently, I'm a student at university. I won't say where, but I will tell you that I'm majoring in 3 subjects and minoring in 5 more. So you could say I'm really busy. My parents weren't particularly keen on letting me stay in any of the on-campus dorms. Not that there's anything wrong with them. They just saw most universities as a collection of bad influences and wanted me as far away from all of that as possible in order for me to focus on my studies. I didn't complain or argue. You see, some people like to describe me as antisocial. It's not that I'm against socializing, I'm just no good at it. I'm shy, weird, and get really closed off when I'm around people I don't really know. When my parents offered to rent me my own place near the campus, I couldn't have been happier. Anyway, we looked for a while and found a small loft apartment about a block away from the campus. It was cozy, quiet, and small. It was basically the perfect place for me. There wasn't much history around the place, and we weren't able to find out much about the previous tenants or even the owners. Some old guy was renting it out through the bank, and that was all we could find out. I wasn't put off by this. It was just a place for me to study and sleep. Now, I guess I better get to the story. I didn't notice anything strange about the place when I moved in. The wooden floorboards creaked when I walked on them, the wind rattled the windows, and I was sharing the space with a family of spiders. It wasn't anything my favorite carpet and a picture or two couldn't fix. It wasn't until I started my lectures that I noticed something was really wrong. I spent most of the day out and always locked the door when I left. I'm not sure what made me notice it at first, but one day when I came back from my lectures, I saw that one of my pictures had been moved. I hung up a painting of a bridge over a river and another painting of a snowy forest on either side of one of the windows. The painting hadn't just moved a little bit on its hook, it had been taken off its hook completely and placed on the other side of the room. I remember staring at it for a while and wondering how long it had been like that. I tried to remember if I had moved it, but I hadn't. I knew that I hadn't. I was almost certain that it was hanging beside the other painting before I left that morning as well. At that point, I completely freaked out and called my father. He drove the whole 4 hours to come and check on me. He checked the whole house, but he couldn't find any evidence that someone had broken in. Besides, who would break in just to move a painting across the room and not take anything? I felt stupid. My father left, assuring me that I shouldn't feel bad and that there's nothing wrong with being cautious or alert. I dropped the matter, but I shouldn't have been so quick to forget about it. A couple of days passed and my studies were getting a lot harder. I ended up spending half my time in lectures and the other half studying for tests. I was struggling. There was this one thing I heard about to help me study. This book suggested using a voice recorder to take down all of my thoughts at night before I go to bed, and then play it in the morning. I was looking for anything I could use to help my studies, so I bought one of those voice recorders that journalists use on my way home. At this point, nothing strange or unusual had happened again. I hadn't come home to find any of my things moved around. Then again, I had convinced myself that I was the one who moved the painting and forgotten about it. If something had been moved around, I probably would have just shrugged it off straight away. I decided to use the voice recorder that night. I sat, studying and reading some of my theories out loud for the recorder. I did this for a few hours before heading to bed. It wasn't until I woke up the next morning that I realized I didn't turn the voice recorder off. It was recording audio the entire night. I wanted to listen to what I had recorded and write it down first before erasing the whole thing, but something strange happened. I got to the end of the recording. I listened to me stop talking, and then the sounds of me packing everything away and tidying up. There was a soft sound of water in the background as I climbed into the shower. I picked up the voice recorder to delete the file. Before I got the chance, I heard something else. I heard another voice. I wasn't sure if I was actually hearing anything at first. My mind could have been playing tricks with me. I could be mistaking the sound of the shower for a distant whisper. So I pressed the speaker up against my ear and listened carefully. What I heard still sends shivers through my body today. I heard a heavy, deep breathing. The breathing was slow and raspy, like that of a smoker. It was so soft that whoever it was couldn't have been standing close to the recorder. They must have been standing in the middle of the room, just breathing. The breathing got louder in my ear until suddenly there was a gasp. I dropped the recorder, or rather, I practically threw it to the ground. There was no way for me to explain it. It freaked me out. I didn't even want to listen to the rest of the audio. I deleted the file and moved on with my day, hoping that it was just a glitch or corruption or something. The next night, I did the same thing. I recorded my thoughts and theories while studying, only I remembered to turn the recorder off when I was done. It wasn't until after I finished showering and was about to hop into bed that I stopped and stared at the voice recorder. A part of me was curious. A part of me wanted to know if it was really a glitch. I turned it on and placed it on the table before I hopped into bed. I had no idea what I would find when I woke up the next morning. I can remember being so restless that night. Something woke me up in the middle of the night. I'm not sure what it was. It could have been a noise or just a feeling. All I know is, when I woke up, I was uneasy. I just lied there, staring up at the ceiling. The worst feeling in the world happened to me that night because, as I was staring into the darkness, it felt like something was staring back at me. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to make a noise. I was paralyzed, frozen in my bed, wide awake, but stuck in a nightmare. I couldn't go back to sleep. I became so aware that there might be someone in the room with me that I convinced myself that there was. I couldn't see anything in the dark. The longer I stared into it, the more my eyes began to play tricks with me. Suddenly, I felt 1,000 eyes staring back at me, and shapeless figures began to form in the corners and up the walls. A cold sweat formed on the back of my neck, and I felt a breeze blowing down there, almost as if someone was standing behind me and breathing down my neck. I leaped out of my bed, throwing the covers aside and practically jumping all the way to the light switch. As I flicked the lights on, it all vanished. A cold glow filled the room, and the feeling of being watched, the feeling that someone else was in the room with me, left as soon as it had formed. I took a moment to breathe, my heart still racing in my chest. How could anyone actually go back to sleep after that? My eyes glanced to the alarm clock on my bedside table, and the warm green numbers read 4 a.m. Only 4 in the morning, I sighed, shaking my head. My classes would have me up in the next 2 hours. There was a part of me that didn't feel quite at ease. I thought about reaching for the light switch and attempting to get a few more moments of sleep, but as I raised my hand, I glanced around to the room once more. My hand froze just before reaching the light switch. A pit formed in my stomach and a lump in my throat. As I looked around the room, my eyes were drawn to the red flashing light from the voice recorder on my desk. There was no way I was going back to bed. There was certainly no way I was going to switch the light off as well. I made my way to my desk and sat down. The voice recorder didn't pick up much at first. It was the static of complete silence and my subtle sleep sounds in the background. The memory of the breathing I had heard before played in my mind. I tensed, preparing myself to hear it again. This time, I heard something way worse. I heard a voice, deep and menacing, distinctly different from my own. "Wake up," the voice whispered in a teasing, sing-song way. "Wake up. Hey, wake up." I jumped out of my seat as the soft whisper turned into a loud growl. The voice recorder went quiet after that. I took a step back, staring at it like some kind of ticking time bomb. It wasn't long until I heard the sound of myself jumping out of the bed and flicking the light switch. The voice recorder kept going after that. Even after the sound of me sitting down at my desk and turning the recorder off to listen to it, it didn't stop. It kept playing this eerie, silent static. "Are you awake yet?" I gasped as I heard the voice whisper in my ear. It didn't come from the voice recorder. It came from behind me. I spun around, but there was no one there. I was completely alone. I didn't feel alone. I know it might be hard for anyone to believe me, and even I was expecting to wake up at some point after that, but I didn't wake up. I was already awake, and it wasn't some nightmare. I was frozen in place for a long time, longer than I'd like to admit. I decided to leave. I couldn't stay there anymore. I was about to call my father again at 4 in the morning for absolutely nothing. I managed to find one of those 24-hour diners nearby, and they were kind enough to let me stay after I ordered some breakfast. I kind of went about my day after that. I tried to forget about what happened at my house. I went to my classes, spoke with my classmates, and tried my hardest not to think about it, but I couldn't get my mind off that voice recorder. I still, to this day, can't explain what happened. I had the voice recorder checked, and according to the guy at the store, there was nothing wrong with it. I couldn't go back to my house. I tried, but it just didn't feel right. I packed my things and stayed with one of my classmates in their dorm. Eventually, I had to tell my parents what happened and why I couldn't go back to the loft apartment they were renting for me. This is the weirdest part. When I tried to play the voice recordings for them as proof, there was nothing. The only voice that played was my own. The deep, menacing voice yelling at me to wake up was replaced with my own voice saying the same thing. I couldn't explain it, nor could I understand it. Thankfully, my parents could see how disturbed I was by the whole thing. They agreed to let me stay with my classmate in the dorms until they found me another place. I was glad not to go back to that place. I threw the voice recorder away as well. I never had any more problems like that again. If anyone can explain what happened to me, I'd be happy to listen.